from the crypt.
Hello, boys and ghouls. Welcome to episode 31 of Dads from the Crypt, a Tales from the Crypt podcast. My name is Jason. I am joined by Mondo.
Hello.
And Jody.
Hello.
And tonight we have a very special guest. His name is Ben Scrivens, and he is the owner of Fright Rags. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you asking me to be on here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Why don't you go ahead and tell people about Fright Rags?
Fright Rags is an online horror website where we sell horror-themed apparel and accessories. We've been doing it since 2003. Everything's licensed, and we have tons of collections from Halloween to Evil Dead to Trick or Treat, Killer Clowns, and tons more.
And you have socks.
Yes, socks and lounge pants and hats and all sorts of goodies.
I think all three of us have on some kind of EC Comics stuff from Fright Rags because Jason's got the hat, Mondo's got a shirt, and I am wearing the lounge pants right now.
I've bought a lot of stuff from Fright Rags over the years. The EC Comics collections of shirts are my favorite things ever. I love the hat so much. My head is too big though. I look like shit in hats.
Exact same problem. We used to, I don't know if you guys knew this, but we did actual HBO Tales from the Crypt stuff at one point with Crypt Keeper, and we did do licensed stuff, and unfortunately we were never able to get the license back. They just did not, they were not interested in licensing out to anybody. So, but we were really happy to work with Corey Misfit at EC Comics and, William Gaines Estate. So we're very happy to keep that spirit alive with the comics. So.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And one of the things I always really appreciate about Fright Rags is you have a very wide variety of sizes. I'm a tall guy, so I like having, the big boy shirts.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure we're as inclusive as possible and making a wide variety. And honestly, like not just the shirts, but even the lounge pants, some people will complain and be like, why don't you go up to like 5X? I'm like, you don't understand. These things stretch so much.
Oh yeah.
And my office manager, Kimmy, her brother is 6'6", 450 pounds. And we have a picture of him in our extra large pants, and he fits them just fine. And I'm like, that's a big boy. I say he can fit in those things. Pretty much anybody can fit in those things. And that's only an XL. And I think we started going up to 3X now. So, I mean,
As my new vice as I get older in life is this soft cotton.
Yes.
And all these
from home material.
Yeah. So I was at this concert on Saturday and I was buying some shirts, and the whole time, like, please be soft cotton, please be soft cotton. And they're soft cotton. It made me so happy because like I have those old band shirts, those old metal shirts, and that heavyweight cotton. Yeah, it just doesn't do it for me anymore.
I tell you, people still, I know that it's coming around again, and people ask us if we're going to go back to like the heavyweight Gildan, like thick chopped cotton. And interestingly enough, not to dive too much into that, but chopped cotton like that, those thick shirts, they're thick mostly because they use really literally shreds and chopped cotton. It's chopped cotton that they have to
Oh wow.
So they kind of make it thicker so it stands up, but the print quality, you usually can't get a really good detailed print because it's too, like, the peaks and valleys of the threads is too much. But when you have a thin, softer cotton, you can actually make it thinner because what we use is ring spun cotton, so it's a longer strand and actually is stronger. And people mistake thinness with it's gonna rip. Now there's some cheap shirts out there, but I always assure people when they have that question, like, actually what we use costs like 3 times more than that other stuff. So it's, but then you got Kanye West selling a Gildan heavyweight shirt with a one color print on it for $175. So what do I know? But
I could talk about that for days, but people are willing to pay for it.
I'm not. Yeah, funny. I'm not.
But it hurts. It hurts.
We all spend enough money on guitars.
That's true. That's true. I can. Yeah. I'm sure people have enough things to say about me and my guitar habits. So I can't say
anything. So your latest collection, I believe, was Twilight Zone, which is very cool.
Yes.
And one of the things I love about Fright Rags, you're not just slapping a logo on there. I mean, yes, you have logos, but then you go a step further and you have all these cool artist renditions and scenes and stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. So again, that's what I really appreciate about Fright Rags. What other collections do you have coming out soon?
Oh, well, we've got we just announced the brand new Texas Chainsaw Massacre film that's
Yeah.
coming on Netflix on the 18th. We got the collection coming out on Wednesday. What's today? Monday? Yeah, so it's Wednesday in 2 days. We've got Twin Peaks coming out. We're doing new stuff for that. We've got a couple other things coming up. We've got Evil Dead 2. We're doing more for that. We're doing more for Killer Clowns. I mean, we literally have collections coming out every week. And when I look at the slate, you know, we basically plan out every week for the entire year already. And things always change and shift. So it's not set in stone, but we like to have a plan. And there's still not enough room for other things that we want to do that we'll probably end up shoehorning in there. So it's definitely fun and interesting to try to come up with new stuff each time, you know, like Twilight Zone we had done a few years ago, and you know we did okay, and then we were able to get the license back recently in the last year and a half or so, and we wanted to bring back some of the best sellers, but then we wanted to do some new stuff. And it's hard with a property like that because you can't always use likenesses, and you can't always use, you know, certain images that you would just say, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you use Rod Serling? Why didn't you do this? Well, we can't. We're not allowed to. It's, you know, so you have to find creative ways to use this imagery. And, you know, we work with really talented artists, and Kyle Crawford and Justin Osborne are two of our main guys that we go to all the time. We use a lot of other people as well, but those are like the guys that are kind of like our exclusive dudes, and been friends of mine for a long time. And they consistently find ways to come up with stuff. I mean, we do collaborate really well together, but there are times where they just present something most of the time where I just go, yep, that's great. That's amazing. Like, I don't know what to say about that. You know what I mean? There's other times where it takes a little more like, oh, I'll try this, let's try this. But there's other times where I'm like, no, you pretty much nailed it. Let's do it. You know?
That's cool.
Nice. Have you guys ever done, or do you ever plan to do a Demon Knight collection?
So, you know, with the Crypt Keeper, Tales from the Crypt stuff, and Demon Knight, Bordello Blood, those types of movies, unfortunately, those being owned by Silver Pictures, that's a separate license. And we did have the rights to those at one point. We were able to do, it was like a limited collection that we did several years ago with FearNet, actually. FearNet, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And we had a limited rights and limited license for that. We wanted to expand the collection. We thought we could do a lot more with it. And basically they didn't want to renew. They weren't really doing anything licensing wise at all. And then I'm not even kidding when I say I probably have a few hundred emails and phone calls to them about getting the rights back over the last few years. And it is literally like the door slamming my face each time. They're not interested in merchandising. I don't know why. They've never been given a reason, and whatever, they don't have to. But as a fan, not even as a person running a horror shirt business, but as a fan, I'm like, but I want Crypt Keeper stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know,
I don't know if you saw, but there was a recent change to some of the rights, reverting back to the Gaines estates. And we did a couple episodes where we looked at that, and I talked to some copyright lawyers, and we kind of looked over the statement, and it's not clear exactly, but we know there's been some movement. So hopefully that can lead to.
I'll have to look into that, because I feel like what the Gaines estate might own might still be different in terms of the design,
right?
Like the Kaven Yeager, you know, Crypt Keeper that we know and love.
Yeah, there's still a ton of unknowns, but at least there was, for the first time in like at least 5, 6, 7 years, there was something that moved, that changed.
Well, that's cool. That's good to know, and it could be that one of the reasons why they didn't want to license it out, because maybe there was some gray area there, because we were just never given a reason. So I have literally no idea whether or not they could even license out to us, or they were just like, nope, not interested, or whatever. And I was like, okay, you know, no real reason was given, so that could be why. But we'll keep trying, you know, because if we can get through it and do it, we'd love to. But again, working with the Gaines estate, we're very fortunate, you know, to have that connection, and they seem really cool. We actually have, speaking of hats, we do have an EC Comics hat that we haven't put out yet that is
Ooh.
going to be in the summer collection. It's more of the logo fan club type of look.
Yeah.
That we just, it didn't fit in the last collection that we did with the shirt that you're wearing, the red Tales from the Crypt shirt, and the, you know, Haunt of Fear and the Vault of Horror ones that we did. I just felt we should hold off, and we have a couple that are designs and that hat that we want to release hopefully this year.
Nice.
All right. Well, tonight we'll be discussing Tales from the Crypt episode Dead Weight, which premiered on July 3rd, 1991. Jody, give us a plot synopsis.
All right. So we open with the Crypt Keeper in another fun costume. That's a theme this season, is Crypt Keeper in costumes. He's a travel agent this time, wearing a Hawaiian shirt and trying to sell us on a trip. Which is appropriate because our story this time is set on a Caribbean island. I don't think they ever talk about which one, but it's an island somewhere. That's all we know. And we open on a guy in a hotel. His name is Red, and he's reading a book and playing with himself. He's playing chess. Okay, he's playing chess, playing both sides of the thing.
Real fast, did you notice the book he's reading is a book of puzzles?
Yeah,
it's like a crossword puzzle book, and he's playing chess at the same time, which is just
playing both
I
sides.
just like the
odd.
lacy thing he had going over his head.
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very sultry opening scene.
So
Well,
while he's
he's-
sitting there, someone named Charlie comes in the room, and Red pulls a gun on him because they're obviously, these guys are up to something. Charlie's he mentions he's tracking Duvall, and he knows where Duvall is keeping the pearl, and it's obvious these guys are going to steal it. We don't know anything about it beyond that. Red wants a plane. Charlie wants a boat. Charlie insults Red and says he's stupid, so Charlie shoots him, and that's the end of. Red shoots him, and that's the end of Charlie for this episode. So then we go to a bar where Red is sitting there, and the bartender points out who Duvall is. He walks in with a woman, and he's wearing the classic like island boss outfit of like a totally white suit, and he's got a cane. Red approaches him and introduces himself and asks if he can work on Duvall's plantation. His companion, whose name is Catherine, comments about his red hair. You're going to hear lots of comments about his red hair. It's where the nickname comes from, and it's very important to this story. It's very rare on this island. And so Red tells Duvall, I grew up on a farm, and Duvall has to see his hands to prove it. And he holds out his hands, and he's got soft, inside boy hands, like most of us probably do.
Money counting hands.
Yes.
I mean, dude, have you seen my hands from jiu-jitsu? They're pretty fucked up.
Yeah, from jiu-jitsu
I
and
have
guitar, y'all
calluses
have
on this
guitar
hand and playing
calluses.
guitar, yeah.
Yeah.
But so there's nothing on Red's hands, but Duvall's hands have all these like squirmy lines all over the back of them. Duvall mentions kind of in passing that there's a revolution happening on the island and people are leaving. And then Duvall decides to hire Red to manage his plantation. The dude he just met in the bar who lied about working on a farm. Excellent. That's good HR skills. So they approach the plantation, and when they do, there's gunfire heard in the distance. And a woman named, is it Pellegray? Pellegray? I don't remember how they say her name in the episode.
Yeah, that's pretty close, I think.
Pellegray.
Pellegray. She exits the house, and she was there cleansing the house in a spiritual way. She's basically a voodoo priestess-ish, as she says. And Pellegray leads Red to his quarters, and she explains the lines on the back of Duvall's hands. He has something called water worms. There's a technical name for it, but I'm not going to try that. And she also mentions that his red hair symbolizes life. When they enter the room, Red closes the door, finds a bloody ram's head behind the bed. Pellegray says it's there for protection, but Red says, take this away. He goes back to the main plantation to find Duvall and sees the black pearl on display in this little display case. Duvall makes sure Red doesn't touch it because it's going to set off the alarm, bring the army coming. It's one of a kind and priceless. And then Duvall kind of makes an appeal to him, says, I want you to call me Emil. I think we could be friends. And because it's John Rhys Davis, I was like, yeah, I'd be his friend. I'll hang out with Duvall on this island. John Rhys Davis is just one of those guys. It's like, I'd like to hang around with him.
I just want to cuddle him.
Yeah.
It's a big teddy bear.
All right.
Jody, does your wife listen to the podcast?
Not usually.
Just wondering before.
It's not an offense against me or anything. She's just not into horror. And she probably hears me talk enough. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
All right. So then Red walks outside of the plantation and he sees Catherine. And just point out real quick, this entire story takes place over the course of like one night. This is a very fast moving story.
Mhm.
He sees her out on the porch. They flirt. He says she shouldn't be with an old man, starts kissing her. Like, I guess they've known each other for about 4 hours at this point, maybe less. And then last episode that we did of this show, we talked about how, people really like say Tales from the Crypt. It's all about gore and nudity, but there's really not that much. So they have a really sweaty sex scene at this point. Very sweaty. It looks
Yes, they do.
damp and uncomfortable, but they seem like they're having a good time.
You can call it moist.
Moist.
Sure.
I'm sure everything in the Caribbean is moist to a degree.
Yeah.
It was very humid in that room that night.
Yes, extremely. Everyone was shiny. Let's just say that. And they immediately plot together to start to steal the pearl together. So later, while Red's sleeping, he wakes up to a bloody headless chicken flapping around in his bed, and he runs outside, and Pellegrin is there, and she said, like, you have to leave that in there. You're being crazy. Catherine's dangerous. And Red says, no, you're the crazy one for putting this headless chicken in my bed. And so he goes back up to the main house. It's full of army people now. They've been ordered to evacuate, but Duvall's just going to stay. And he says, Red, I want you to take care of Catherine on the convoy that's taking us out of here. But they don't. They stay behind because they're in the middle of a plot. And they go to steal the pearl, but the pearl's already gone. Red goes to check and see, and he sees Duvall loading a sack of cash. Red says, given the pearl, Duvall says, but I can't lay my hands on it. He uses that phrase a couple of times. I can't lay my hands on it. Isn't getting Catherine enough? So Duvall knows what's up. I mean, it was on the porch. They'd been talking like 30 seconds earlier, and they start making out on the porch. Of course, Duvall knows what's up. But then Red demands it again and shoots Duvall. And he looks through Duvall's bag, and the pearl isn't there, but there are some balloons in there. And Red is smart enough to realize, oh, these balloons are there so that he could swallow the pearl. And then he rips Duvall's shirt open, and his whole chest and stomach are covered with those worm tracks we saw on the back of his hands earlier. And then in what is probably the goriest scene of Tales from the Crypt that we have seen yet, he cuts into his stomach, and when he opens it up, his stomach cavity is full of worms, just worms and organs crawling all over the place. And Red reaches in, and he finds the pearl in Duvall's intestines and pulls a big strip of intestines out and chops into them and gets the pearl out. And, they're having fun with their special effects in this episode. It's actually really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But while he's getting the pearl out, Catherine grabs a gun and points it at him. She says to put down the pearl, but as she's threatening him, Pellegrin starts stabbing a voodoo doll, and Catherine falls to the ground with a big bloody spot on her back where she's been psychically stabbed to death. Pellegrin says Red needs her to escape, so they start escaping together. She asks, why did you steal this pearl? Has it made you happy? And he thinks about it for a while and says, the pearl means more than money. It also means respect, because I was the guy to get it. And she said, if I had red hair like yours, I would have respect. So she leads him through the jungle and ends up in her village. And she mentions again that his spirit must be very special because of his red hair, and then pulls out a machete and in one giant swipe chops his head off, and the stump falls down directly into the camera. And she tosses the pearl away out into the grass and takes her prize back to the village that will earn her respect, Red's head full of red hair. And then we have a little closing segment where the Crypt Keeper interviews Whoopi Goldberg. I don't know why that happened. It was kind of amusing, but yeah, it just came out of nowhere. But that's it. That's our story.
All I know is that the Crypt Keeper be the best late night talk show host. Like, we can get rid of Jimmy
I
Kimmel,
watch it.
all the other guys. Like, give me the Crypt Keeper and John Kassir.
I'm surprised they didn't try to do a spin-off of
Crypt
that
Keeper
kind.
interviews.
Yeah, that would have been great. Ben, you're our guest, so why don't you start us off? What did you think of this episode?
So, I loved Tales from the Crypt growing up, and I didn't have HBO, so I could only watch it at my friend's house. So my viewings early on were limited. So I had never seen this particular episode, but I love the fact that James Remar's in it, and Whoopi Goldberg, and even Vanity, who was kind of a name at the time. And seeing her boobs was a plus. But I felt it was and again, I love Tales from the Crypt, and there's certain episodes that I can think of and go, oh my God, I love this episode. This one, it felt, and then you guys have been watching a lot of these, obviously, so correct me if I'm wrong, but this one felt really just like a filler to me in a season. It felt like very thin. Yeah, you had a couple stars in there, which was awesome, and the gore was great. And you did bring up a good point. Like, honestly, seeing him go into the intestines and seeing the worms, that was cool. And obviously the decapitated head, that's always great. I'm always welcoming that. I'm still confused. Like, why do you really need to put the pearl in the balloon? You're just going to crap it out anyway. I mean, I get it. It's to keep it clean, but like, I mean, really? Like, it's is it really doing any good? You know,
Maybe it's harder to easier to find when it works its way out.
I have to think, though, I think Red probably did him a favor by killing him and cutting him out, because that thing was like golf ball sized. He was going to have a really bad time.
Well, you're going to have, that's going to be, it's going to
I don't know how he swallowed it even.
Well, I honestly wonder. So it's kind of that thing. If you watch like Narcos or anything like that, they do that with drug smugglers, so their body doesn't break it down. So maybe it's a thing, or maybe the bodies, the bile in the stomach might break it down. I don't know.
It's not like powdered drugs or anything like that.
Right.
It's pearl. Like, it's not going anywhere.
Solid item.
You're just getting some crap off of it. Like, if you're already going through your own crap to get it, what's the balloon gonna do? Like, you might as well just run it under a faucet. You're good to go. Like, I just, at this point, like, I just don't get it. But so I have to say it wasn't memorable in that sense. I mean, like we said, the steamy sex scenes, whatever, is fine, and the gore is fine and all that. And again, having the star power is cool. It's funny, I actually liked the post credits or after the show with Whoopi Goldberg there as the late night guest for Crypt Keeper. It did really remind me of that time, 1991, because that was around the time, if you guys remember, they did the horror awards. That was a thing that Robert Englund hosted. He hosted one year.
Right.
He hosted both years. It felt like this weird convergence of I use the term loosely, like mainstream sort of things with horror. It's like when you watched Freddy's Nightmares on Friday night and you're like, I can watch Freddy on my TV on Friday nights at 11 o'clock. Like, that seemed to breach this wall that was only reserved for like him being in movies. So seeing Whoopi Goldberg interact with Crypt Keeper in like a real world situation as opposed to in a scripted show. I know that was scripted, but in almost feeling like this late night TV setting felt very of the time for me. So it was very nostalgic for me. I actually really enjoyed that little bit, even though it was short, because it was different. It's not like he did in every show.
It's also like, remind me, like, wasn't like Jason Voorhees came on Arsenio Hall?
Yes, exactly. I remember that night that he came out. Kane Hodder came out in the Part 8 costume.
Yes.
He did talk, obviously, and that's what I'm talking about. It's stuff like that where you started seeing it bleed into literally other parts of popular culture that, as a kid, I was 13, 14 at the time, going, my mind is blown, because it feels like what I love that only maybe a couple friends of mine like is now being seen by everybody. And it was so, I mean, because it's pre-internet, it just felt weird. So this sort of, I don't want to say it was breaching the fourth wall, but it was definitely this adjacent thing to where you see Whoopi and Crypt Keeper interacting in this sort of, again, like real world, like she's literally being Whoopi Goldberg talking to this puppet. You're like, hey, that's neat. But the episode itself, I didn't hate. I sort of kind of went, this felt really contrived. Like, he got hired that same night. Like, it all literally takes place in like 36 hours. And I get it. It's from the comics, but I was just like, huh, really? That's what you got? But I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't think my kids are getting to the age that I can watch more horror with them. And so, like, my daughter, she's 12, and I'm pushing what I consider acceptable. And we've already watched Friday the 13th, all of them. We've watched a couple Nightmare on Elm Street, things like that. I don't think a kid today, though, a 12-year-old, can understand how big these slashers got during that time. Like in the late 80s and the early 90s, they were icons. Like, even kids who had never seen a horror movie knew who Freddy Krueger was. They knew who Jason Voorhees was.
I mean, you look at Freddy, right? He was in comic books. He was in, and not like he had comic books, right? But he was just in the ads for comic books. He had a 900 number where he told scary stories.
Yeah.
He was on, there used to be a political like puppet TV show back in the early 90s, late 80s that Freddie was on.
Yep.
I mean, it was crazy how much these characters were ingrained into pop culture back then.
I think the pinnacle, because you're absolutely right. The pinnacle for me personally, he had a freaking talking doll.
Yes.
Now, let us not forget, this is a child molester, a child killer. And now he is in plush doll form that talks when you pull a string. To me, that is and I know they downplayed the child molester killer part, which is good, you know.
Well, I always wondered kind of if they're always very adamant on never always talking about killing, never talking about anything sexual, because maybe they actually thought that like if we have something here, this part's not going to fly, where this part for some reason like, oh, you killed him, that's cool, but
no, you're right. Like they definitely, because I don't remember when they mentioned that originally, but you're right, they completely downplayed it, which was good. But he was still considered a child killer throughout.
Oh, 100%.
So even as a child killer, you have this doll, this toy for a child that pull a string to talk, and it's like, this is so twisted. That's why I bought it. I still have it. It's in the case. It's in the box.
Oh, no way.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have one. It's pristine. Because it's the pinnacle of the 80s, like craziness. Like, let's take something that's killing kids and let's make it a doll. Holy shit.
I mean, they did that all the time in the 80s though, too, because they take like, oh, here's an R-rated movie, definitely not for kids. Let's make a cartoon series about this.
Exactly.
Let's make RoboCop a cartoon. You know?
I mean,
Paul Verhoeven cartoons.
I mean, the Crypt Keeper was a cartoon. Like
I was just gonna say, that was a cartoon.
What's interesting, because this episode is directed by Toby Hooper, who directed the first episode of Freddy's Nightmares, the No More Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know if it's unofficial or official canon, whatever, origin story of how Freddy, like, I think it shows his trial and how that was mishandled. So it's all kind of bringing it back.
I had the VHS tape of that I bought for way too much money.
That you can now find online.
Yes.
So this is directed by Toby Hooper. Did both the first two Texas Chainsaws, Funhouse, Salem's Lot, Poltergeist, Life Force, Invaders from Mars, on and on and on. Just a real powerhouse of a director. And again, this came out right after Ghost came out for Whoopi Goldberg and right before Sister Act. So this is right as
she's right, a banner year, man.
This is peak Whoopi.
Yeah.
Peak Whoopi. And she actually had a show, I think, like Tales from the Whoop. At least that's on our IMDb page.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm familiar with this.
That must be short.
I think she must have been a big fan, because she also pops up like in Bordello of Blood. We need to figure out
cameo too.
Yeah, like a really non sequitur moment. So we need to get into that. John Rhys Davies as Duvall. He's always a joy. He's always just so charismatic. He's like in Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings. He was in Waxwork, which I need to rewatch that. I haven't seen that in a long
Waxwork's
time.
so much fun.
Waxwork is it's a gem of the 80s for sure, or 90s. Think about 90s.
That's a cool ensemble cast too, where it's like these almost seemingly random people thrown together, and you're like, oh, I know him from that, and I know her from that, and it's I love that.
And, I didn't know this, but John Rhys Davies also did a voice on Gargoyles, the cartoon.
Oh, that's cool.
That show's kind of making a little bit of a comeback.
NECA just released some figures from Gargoyle.
From NECA. Vanity is Catherine is played by a model, actress, singer named Vanity, who was like a protege of Prince at the time. And she was in Terror Train, and she was also on Friday the 13th, the series, for at least one episode. She was
in Terror Train? She was one of the...
Yeah.
Oh my God, I guess I didn't realize that.
And then James Remar, he almost has 300 IMDb credits. It's huge. He was in Warriors, 48 Hours, Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. He was the cop in Psycho, the remake, that pulls her over and has like the big glasses and everything. He was in Hellraiser Inferno, and he was Dexter's dad in the Dexter TV series.
Oh, wow.
So I'll jump off what you were saying. It's the plot in this is kind of so-so. There's an episode a lot like this that I kept thinking of called Till Death, which also takes place in the Caribbean setting and also has voodoo and has a wealthy white guy kind of having relations with, you know, a local woman. So there's a lot of similarities. I think this one's actually a lot better than that episode. It's still not great because everything's really telegraphed. You just kind of know where everything's going. But the casting is great. I don't think you could get a better cast than this. And everyone's acting really, really understanding the part that they're acting, and the directing's good. And yeah, that worm scene, it made me squirm so much. Yeah, it's definitely the most gross out thing I think we've seen. And for the second episode in a row, we had a really good severed head.
Yes.
So I can't go. You can't go wrong with a good severed head scene. And also Whoopi Goldberg with a machete was just awesome.
I'll agree with that.
But yeah, overall the plot itself was okay. But it was fun. It was still fun to watch.
I do wonder what the purpose was of making the John Rhys Davis character like with worms and all that stuff. Like it felt a little I mean, maybe I missed something, but it felt a little unexplained to me, where I'm like, why? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it had to be there just for that gag, just for the gross
Yeah.
out gag.
it's like, why was he how could he live filled with worms? Like,
There was
I
no
was
blood in
so
his
many
body.
questions where I was like,
His
why
body was
is
an
he
empty
even-
husk filled
So,
with worms and
I-
guts. There
I
was
thought
no
that-
blood in his body at all.
I thought that was going to be the kind of ending twist.
Right.
That James
Yeah.
Remar was going to get away. He was get on the boat, whatever. Then he was going to look down, and then you would see like worms crawling up his arm. He's like, "Oh no, I've got the
Yeah,
worms
that
now."
would have made more sense to me. Like, oh, it passed on to him or whatever. Like, he
Yeah.
was with something, but they never went back to it. And you're like,
Yeah.
but why?
Yeah, and Vanity even brought that up, like, be careful touching them or you might get them too. I was like, okay, this is where we're going, and then they kind of
Yeah.
just didn't do anything with it. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's weird.
but you knew Whoopi was going to, get him for the hair, and yeah, because she kept talking about the hair. You knew the hair was also
Talked
going to
about
come
it a
into. Was going to come into it.
He likes those gingers.
Yeah, exactly. Mondo, what did you think of this episode?
I liked it, but much like Ben said, we just got off this like streak of some of the best episodes in the entire series. This felt like a little bit of a letdown. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a great, solid episode, but man, like I've been giving out a lot of 5s and 4.5s lately, and this just felt like a disappointment when I compare them to those. The story was solid, but overall, one thing I kind of look at the older I get, at the end of a movie or a TV show, or again, I'm a wrestling nerd, a wrestling match, I base it on how much fun did I just have? Did I enjoy it? Did I find myself looking at my watch to figure out when this episode is going to end? And I was looking at my watch a couple times because I thought they dragged a lot of stuff out. Like it wasn't, granted, for a show that fit, or an episode that fit did a whole like weeks with a story in one day, technically.
Right.
It still felt like it dragged in parts. I thought the acting was fantastic. I really enjoyed the score on it. The gore effects, great. Like Jody said, that intestine scene just good, and the fun
Wade
severed head.
pulled it over the blade to like cut through. I could
right.
feel that, and I was like, "Damn, that's legit."
Oh man, and like looking at a critical eye, they put some work into those effects, like with the worms and the intestines and the cadaver. I imagine they had a great time making those props. And that was a lot of the cool stuff. But I will say the wraparound is one of my favorite wraparounds ever.
So good.
I love the Crypt Keeper mispronouncing the words and the way he always does. And Whoopi Goldberg just dryly correcting him.
Yeah.
And he looks through, he's like, yeah, okay. So I thought that was awesome. And man, who doesn't love the Crypt Keeper in a suit?
Yeah,
It's just
anytime.
it fits for him. He should really up his wardrobe game, because man, he looks good in a suit. So yeah, with all of his issues, it is definitely an enjoyable episodes, but I think it's definitely a drop off from what we've watched so far this series. But still, I think a very very solid Tales from the Crypt episode. Also at the beginning or towards the middle, when they're sitting at the table and the first time he meets the general and Vanity, I don't know what she's doing to that cigar.
Yeah,
But
As a cigar smoker, I took offense to that. 'Cause I was
Okay.
like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, I like a good
off
cigar.
give, you're messing up the rotation.
I mean, I enjoyed it, but
Well, okay.
but as a guy who likes a good cigar every now and again, I've never done that. And if I did, I would start an OnlyFans page and charge $10.
No, I agree with you on that one. It's a good point, because I saw that too, and I do love cigars, and I was like, what's happening right now?
I was actually surprised when she lit it and gave it to him because I just thought they were just going to go the whole like, oh, they're just going into this right now because all I could think about was like, what the fuck is she doing? Again, I'm okay with it. But yeah, overall, solid
I was
episode.
equally offended and aroused.
Exactly.
As is often the case.
It reminds me of the what is it? The Futurama episode. Death by Snoo Snoo.
Yeah.
Yay! But yay! It's okay. Yeah. Overall, solid episode. Drop probably the weakest one of the season so far. But definitely, I think it's worth the watch.
You'd put this below that Love at First Sight episode.
Oh wait, no,
Yeah.
no. You're right. You're right. I've been, but the last you've been so good. So
Yeah, I know.
I try to wipe Love at First Sight out of my memory. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's definitely above that. It's a solid episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jody, what'd you think?
Yeah, this is somehow less than its parts because like
Yeah.
every part of it is really good. Like the cast, really good. The setting, like the Caribbean setting where they've got it, and the the special effects and the gore and everything that goes into it is great. And at the end, it's kind of okay. Like it's not terrible, but it's just kind of okay. And I really think the weak point probably is the story, which is not usually the case. Usually the EC Comics story is, something they can do a lot with, but they like his red hair, so they cut his head off. Is okay. Like it's not a huge twist, especially since it's so telegraphed by saying about 300 times, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
your hair." Oh, they're going to do something to his hair. He's going to die because of his hair in some way. So yeah, it's one of those that should work better than it does, but it's fine. Like I didn't hate it. But it's not going. I probably won't remember it in a few weeks, other than that we've talked about it here. It's just kind of fine.
Did it make anybody else think that The Godfather missed a great opportunity to use a severed a headless chicken instead of a horse head?
Yeah.
Or they
a
could have
goat.
had a severed horse head and a
goat.
goat chicken.
Yeah, have the horse
That'd
head
be really
pinned up to the
confusing.
wall.
Honestly, at first, I didn't know what the hell that was. I thought it was some moving, blooming onion or something in the bed. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell is that thing? And I'm like, I had no clue.
I thought it was gonna be like a zombie or something was gonna pop out. It was gonna have like a dream sequence. That's what I was expecting. But-
I liked weird, and I know Tales from the Crypt episodes generally aren't usually huge in scale, but I actually liked the intimate quality of it. It felt I don't know, it just felt like it was, I don't want to say low budget, but it felt like a very DIY, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but like
Mhm.
because the sets were so pretty, sparse, they were in basically one house or whatever for the entire thing. I know there was the bar scene and the hotel room, but it felt very intimate. I don't know, for whatever reason that appealed to me. I don't know, because it almost felt like something that I could go do. You know what I mean? But obviously the cast was amazing and the effects were amazing. But I just mean in general, I kind of liked the intimate feeling of it. But like you said, like we all said, like the story just kind of fell flat, where it was like, oh, this could have been something cooler, where it was a better twist or something about it could have just hooked me better. And Tales from the Crypt episodes have done that before for me, where I'm like, oh, that payoff was so great.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it here. And I was just sort of like, oh, that was it. I didn't feel like I was led down the path to see that. I thought it was going to go somewhere else.
But
Yeah, I
one thing
remember
interesting,
thinking about 20 minutes in, like, man, I hope the twist really pulls this one around.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't.
but one thing interesting too is like you look at Toby Hooper, right? And when he did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, he kind of thought he was making a black comedy. And man, the perfect setting for a black comedy is a Tales from the Crypt universe. And he probably made one of the more straightforward horror episodes when this like should have been his canvas to let these actors just ham it up and make that black comedy. More in the vein of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
I was gonna say this is after TCM 2.
Yeah.
So he really he knows how to go over the top.
Yeah. So that's,
I think part of it is he's just kind of inserted into the Tales from the Crypt machine at this point, and they already have the script, and like I'm sure the directors are able to do a little bit change up, but my guess, I think they already had the script and everything worked out, and he just wanted to more focus on the effects and really getting those payoffs.
they were probably on a very tight budget and a tight
Mhm.
timeline. It was probably
Yeah.
like, you have to come in here for, whatever, 4 days or
5 days,
something,
yeah.
and this is what you got to do, and it's a job that you're hired on. You probably didn't have a lot of creative goal, I would imagine. I don't know.
But you did talk about like the scope of it, and it's funny because we talked about in the other episode that this reminded me of, Till Death, that also took place in a very similar setting. That one looked like it was shot in someone's backyard. But this one, at least you could tell it was a little bit of a step up, where
Yeah.
it wasn't like grand vistas, but at least there was that cool shot at the end where they're kind of going through the jungle. You could see down the hill into like what looked like a village, like that.
Yeah, that added
That
some production value for sure.
that was definitely a little bit more production value than we've seen in the other similar episode. But yeah, especially like this cast was very small. Like there's a couple bit parts. There's that guy Charlie or whoever in the beginning, but it was pretty much just the 4 main characters. Whoopi Goldberg just kind of like shows up randomly too. She's not even like a major part until the very end.
That's the thing. Like, I think of another episode. I don't. You guys will know more than I will. I don't remember what season it was, but like Cutting Cards was always one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one of the
Henderson
best.
and that other guy. And again, that is a wicked small cast. And I know they go to a couple different places where you might see some exterior shots, but most of the time they're together. It's just those two, and they're playing, right? But think of the suspense that builds. Think of like the path that you go down. You're like, oh my God, where is this going to end? I can think about that episode in my mind and go, it's like a roller coaster, and you're waiting for that final drop, and that end scene and what they do, and you're like, brilliant.
Perfect.
Whereas this, in a similar fashion, where you have a great cast, like we said, great effects, and it's like a smaller scope, you're like, and okay, that really just fell flat for me.
Yeah, I think even at the end when she's walking him towards her village, which they never talk about, that was a great moment. They could have expanded upon like where her roots are at, and kind of maybe turn that into a little bit more of the story. Maybe cut out some of the stuff in the middle.
I do have one question about Red's character, because throughout the whole thing, we see him like reading puzzles and like strategies, playing chess. But every time he comes up in a situation, he just shoots the other person. Like,
Well,
he's not like some strategist who's like, I have this perfect plan. He's like,
well, I think that's
just
kind of
shoots him and digs through his guts.
I think that's kind of part of the story, because the guy asks him right away, like, "Oh, I peg you for a chess player," and it's almost kind of insulting him in a way when you watch a whole episode, saying that, "Oh, you think you're so smart because you do this and you do this and this, but you're not as smart as you think you are. And I'm going to outwit you." Which he really doesn't outwit him, because he ends up dead too. But
they have things where they potentially set up, and they never follow through, except for his red hair. Like, it's literally the only thing they set up that they follow through on. Everything else is almost like a red herring. But it's like, well, okay, like you said, the puzzle thing, the chess thing, that could have been something to tease out more, or the fact that he's got some weird stuff on his arms and worms inside his body. But let's not deal with any of that, why he's got worms inside of his body. Let's just go back to the fact that he's a ginger. Like, what the hell? Like, I don't I'm actually getting more pissed off the more I think of it.
Like, no offense, but if I saw one of you guys, we shook hands, and your hand like that, I'd be like, oh yeah, we need to like get you to an ER now.
So this is what I thought was going to happen. As I was like kind of rewriting the episode in my head, I thought that the red hair was going to be the cure for the water worms, and that this whole thing was a big ploy to lure this ginger guy to Duval.
That's a twist.
That's already way brilliant, more than what we just watched.
And
I'm
then
really kidding. Like,
twist,
that I would have been fine.
The twist.
My rating is going down and down and down the more we talk about this. Damn.
So I thought, the twist at the end was gonna be, it was like they were playing a game of chess to lure his One Piece or whatever into the den.
Yeah,
there you go.
That is brilliant, because you're absolutely right. He was the one trying to get the pearl, but they actually lured him in.
Yeah.
See, I already like the episode a million times better. Just exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Or even just if you played the contrast versus the logical puzzle brain versus the religion of voodoo. Or I think I'm going to assume it was voodoo they're talking about, obviously with the voodoo doll. That would have been even better. Like, just pacing, like, he can't accept that voodoo is real, and there's Whoopi Goldberg basically using voodoo to take care of all of her adversaries.
Yeah. Jody, why don't you give us the comic comparison?
Okay, so this came from Vault of Horror number 23, which was February-March issue of 1952. It was written by the big guys here. This was a Bill
Hmm.
Gaines and Al Feldstein story. So they're the guys who run all of EC Comics. Art by Jack Davis. So Jack Davis is one of the big guys at EC. But it's basically just a tamer version of this same story. Like they didn't really do a whole lot different in the story, other than they just spiced it up. So in the original comic, there's no girl, there's no wife, obviously no sex scene, no headless animals. The pearl is in a safe instead of digging it out of Duvall's guts. And so all of this was stuff added in the show, like all the gore,
What about the
all
worms?
all the puzzle stuff, all the worms. None of that was in the original comic. It was literally just guy shows up, gets a job, shoots the guy who's working for, and then he gets his head chopped off because he has red hair. So all the spice, like everything we liked about this episode, came from the episode itself. The only thing that's in the comic too, this is a 1952 comic dealing with people who live on a Caribbean island. There is some unfortunate stereotyping going on because 1952. But in the end, because instead of Pellegrin, the character's name is Cuckoo, and he's drawn, in some ways that have kind of that casual racism of the 1950s in there. But he does kind of twist it around at the end. So the whole time he's very deferent and uses terms like massa and stuff like that, real, garden variety 50s racism. But at the end, he gets the drop on Red and cuts his head off. And so he's been playing him the whole time. So I think maybe they were going for that, is like he seems like he's like being a servant, but he's actually plotting against him. I don't know. I do know that EC Comics tended to be really progressive in a lot of ways. And there were a lot of stories about racism directly that condemned racists. And so I want to give them a little bit of a little bit of grace here, even with some of the stuff that was there. It was very common for the era. But I will say, Jason, did you look at this one?
I looked at it very briefly. I didn't have much time.
Yeah, so there's that drawing, but Red's face is this like great. He's like hideous. He looks like the Crypt Keeper himself. It's all gaunt and drawn out, just Jack Davis illustrations. So I don't know why Red looked like that, but it was cool to look at.
So did the character at the end, did he chop off his head for the hair or for the
Yes.
pearl?
For the head.
Okay, so one of the hair. Okay, that was still there.
Yeah.
So
The pearl was
was
always a
still
distraction.
there. He wanted the pearl, but in this case, the guy wanted the hair still.
Right.
Still seems like a really convoluted way to chop off someone's head.
Yeah. It's one of those that they added a lot to it. If they had just played it like it was in the comic, this would be a really boring episode.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're going to stick with the story, they were kind of confined, because I think the story itself is just kind of weak in this one.
But then it's like, well, then again, it goes back to like, then why did you make the guy have worms inside of him? Like,
Right.
I understand the woman element, like the vanity element, you spice it up a little bit. I kind of get that. There's a little bit of she turned heel on him or whatever. I get it, but why make John Ray Davies character? I'm sorry, I'm hung up on it. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I feel cheated, because if that wasn't even elaborated on in the comic where they had to cut it for time,
Right.
why the hell was that even in there?
I really think at
Fine
some
that he
point,
swallowed the pearl and he ripped him open, fine, no worries. But like, why give him this affliction with worms? Like, I don't understand. This is
I really feel like somebody in the special effects department was like, it'd be cool if we cut open a body and it was full of worms. And they were like, okay, sure, we'll write it in. I can't think of any reason beyond that shot.
It reminds you of when Kevin Smith was talking about when I forgot he's doing work with, and the guy just kept saying it has to have a giant spider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It has to have worms. I don't
like
care what you do.
hate it and love it at the same time. Like, I don't know what to think about it.
I mean, it made for, like I said, a really squeamish moment. So it made no sense, but still had an effect. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our rankings. Ben, so we do a scale of 1 to 5. You can do half points, 5 being masterpiece, 1 being, or 0.5 being not good, to be kind.
I'm gonna have to go with a 2.5 on this one. I think
Okay.
again, cast, like we said, gore, all those things, But I think Jody, you set it up perfectly where the sum was less than the parts. It had all these great parts, but all together it fell flat for me. So I think 2.5 is gonna be where I'm sitting at with it.
That's interesting because usually we have the opposite where the sums make for a better episode, and I
Right.
don't know what's missing in this one. Jody, what do you rate the episode?
Yeah, I'm thinking story wise, I'm also with like, because right 2.5 is right in the middle, but there were just some cool moments and effects that pushed it up just a touch for me. So I'm gonna go with a 3.
Mondo.
So I was at 3 until we started really discussing it, and I'm like, I dislike this one. I was gonna go 2, but then I'm like, yeah. And then Jody talked about the special effects. I'm like, you're right. It's got to be at least a little bit more. So I'm gonna go with Ben as well and say 2.5. It's not a bad episode. Don't get me wrong. I think people hear 2.5 and they think, oh, it's terrible. No, it's not bad. It's just I wouldn't go out of your way to see it. But if you watched it, I don't think you'd be upset. I think you'd be like, yeah, it's a middle of the road episode. So 2.5 is about right.
If this was a grade, we're not talking about an F here. We're not talking about getting
No.
a 50. This is a C.
Yeah,
dude,
there's
it's
much
fine.
worse.
You did the essay. You had to get 3 pages in. You double spaced it. Like, I get it. You had to get 3 pages in, but
It was exactly 500 words.
Exactly.
You're passing, but you're not with honors here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the 3, and I agree with pretty much everything we've said. It's just that squeamishness. I haven't had that in Tales from the Crypt up to this point, so that I'll give it the extra bump just for that. And great cast.
I really do love though that last week we were like, people have this reputation that Tales from the Crypt is full of gore and sex, and it's really not true. And then we watched this episode, like, oh, gore.
Yeah,
oh,
it's
sex.
like
yeah, there we go. There's
Tales
all
from the
in.
Crypt was like, hold my beer. Let me get on this.
I was actually surprised at the sex. I don't know. I'm trying to remember any other episode of Tales from the Crypt that I've seen that had, because honestly, I was sitting there watching it going, wait a minute, are they? Oh, they kind of did show some.
Yeah, you get that eventually.
I know it was HBO, so they could have, but I was still a little surprised at it, and I was like, oh, okay.
There's been some casual nudity in an occasional episode, but I mean, this was a full-out sex scene. It was.
I mean,
very sweaty.
In 1991, that cigar scene might have been the closest thing to fellatio you've ever seen on screen at that point. So,
before we wrap up, Ben, we never got a chance to ask you about your Tales from the Crypt fandom. What are your favorite episodes?
Oh man, so Cutting Cards is one of them. I always forget the titles. The one with William Hickey where he switches the body with Rick Rossovich.
oh yes,
I can't remember who else was in it. But
yeah, where he sells off the body like part at a time.
selling off body parts to get younger.
yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the Switch?
I love
I'm
that
not talking
one.
about the Switch.
The Switch.
Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously the one with Demi Moore is great.
Mhm.
With what's his name? Oh God, I can't remember.
Jeffrey Tambor.
Jeffrey Tam. Oh my God, and the way
Yeah.
he is so freaking gross.
Mhm.
I just love that one. I'm trying to think of other ones that I've seen that I really liked. Those 3 stood out to me. I think I watched those 3 a lot. I remember having a tape. And again, I didn't have HBO growing up, so I would be at my friend's house watching them whenever I could. And I'd also have my friends tape them for me at times. But they had, I don't want to say it was a movie, but they had, I think, those 3 episodes in like encapsulated in sort of like almost like a feature-length thing.
Yeah, one of the VHS tapes up on my wall is a collected like 4 episodes of Tales from the Crypt around a theme. Like they'll be like, oh, these are all mystery ones or things like that. So they definitely did that in some of the later releases.
Because I had like a tape. It was a recorded, like I recorded it off the TV, but it was a tape that had, it was almost like they put those 3 back to back. But I remember watching those 3 like the most. I mean, again, I actually have all the 7 seasons on DVD. So, in terms of like growing up, my exposure was, if I was at my friend's house, what was that, Saturday nights at like 9 or 10 o'clock? I can't remember what time it came on, but whatever. If we were around, yeah, we'd totally throw it on. And I have fond memories of it being on at my friend's house, but and having him tape me episodes. Like, dude, tape me Tales from the Crypt so I can watch it or something. But,
Awesome.
those episodes stand out to me, but they were also, I just think, really solid ones, because whenever I've watched, again, some other ones where I've seen where I'm like, oh man, that's not as good as like this other one that I've seen, like, again, like Cutting Cards or The Switch or something like that.
Yeah, I was also part of the generation that grew up without like the premium cable. And so when I went to my friend's house, I remember staying up till like 2 a.m. just watching, like, there's movies on all night long.
Right. Can't stop watching.
I haven't slept all night, but I did watch Night of the Demons 1 and 2 tonight. So this has been a good night.
Man, that sounds like a great night.
All right, Mondo, give us the song of the day.
Alrighty. So there is a man by the name of Nurgle. It's not his real name. That's his stage name. He's famous for having the band Behemoth, a Polish death / black metal band. And he's gone through a lot of shit in his life, from having, I think he had cancer at one point that he's beaten. I think he just last year he beat a trial in Poland over blasphemy from staging from an incident in the early 2000s where he tore a Bible up on stage. So they brought him up on blasphemy charges in Poland. And I think he actually got convicted of I forgot they called it, like offending the religious people. They actually convicted of it, and he appealed it and went upon to the Supreme Court of Poland, and they let him off only because they said, it's too long ago. It's been 14 years. We can't convict you on this anymore. So if anyone wants to know, like, some country that don't have freedom of religion, there you go. You can still get convicted of blasphemy in Poland or offending religious people if you do anything that could be considered not kosher. But early Behemoth.
Sorry.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. But early Behemoth was at some really good black metal, and he was writing this shit when he was like 14 and 15, 16, 17, and they came out in like 94, 95 with their first handful of albums. I love their first handful of albums, and they went on the streak where they did this weird kind of like death metal stuff I didn't love. And then what's funny is they released a record, I think in 2018, called like I Love You at My Darkness, something like that, that I really enjoyed. But in between then, he started this band called Me and That Man, which is a country folk band. And I honestly think it's some of the best work he's ever done in his career. Just very honest, like, you know, you can feel an artist is making music and it's really from the heart. And they're really doing something they really, truly love. And it felt really, really strong like that. The first record they did was called Songs of Love and Death. And they've released 2 albums since then, and the names escape me. It's something like New Shit, Same Man, or something like that. But the song I want to highlight is off the album Songs of Love and Death, which came out in 2017, I believe. It's called Voodoo Queen, which is very apropos for this episode. So it's not metal. It's country folk music done by a metal singer. And I think it's one of my probably favorite records of the past 5-6 years.
Nice.
And you can also find all these songs that Mondo talks about on Spotify.
Yeah, I'm behind by a few weeks on updating that list because I don't have a Spotify premium account, and none of my friends want to add me on as a family member. So
okay, we gotta talk.
I'm an Apple Music guy. I'm sorry. I should make one on Apple Music too. I guess I could do that as well for my friends out there with Apple devices. But Spotify is actually great. I have so much stuff on Apple Music that I just have to deal with figuring out how to transfer all that over. And it's just, once you're in one ecosystem, you're kind of fucked. That's how technology works.
Yeah.
All right, Jody, hit us with your trivia.
All right. I didn't have any great trivia this time to start with, but I did notice in the moment that they get to the plantation and there's gunfire in the background, you do hear a Willem scream, but you don't know what that is. You hear it all the time without even realizing it's that little type scream. I think it's from a movie where guys.
Can we get
I'm not
that
gonna
again?
do it again. It was one time. But you'll
It's not
recognize
exactly like that. 'Cause
it does not. No.
Hey, for next week, send in your best Willem scream and we'll
Sure, go for it.
play it here.
Yeah, well, Jason, you can get your kids to do it. They've done the Crypt Keeper laugh, and so now they can do the Willem scream. But yeah, you've heard it a million times. It was from an old movie, I think in the 40s, where a man's getting eaten by an alligator, and he has this kind of iconic scream, and they use it all the time. It's almost like an in joke. And you see it sometimes it's fun. Sometimes they throw it in the middle of a very serious like battle scene. And you're like, well, that kind of pulled me out of everything because I'm so aware of that. But also, this episode was written by a friend of the show, Alan Katz. I think Jason said this was the first script he ever wrote. Is that right?
Not well, it's the first time in Tales from the Crypt that him
Oh.
and Gilbert are credited
Yes, and-
as the writers. So I was looking at this. Him and Gilbert Adler came on for the third season, and every episode you see Gil Adler as the producer, and then in the after credits you see Alan Katz as story editor. But this is the first episode that we've seen with both Gil Adler and Alan Katz credited for the screenplay.
Yes. And they went on to do Bordello of Blood and a lot of other stuff together.
Yeah, many more episodes.
Many more.
So, all right. Thank you, Joe. God, there's some movie, I'm trying to remember what it is, where they have a Wilhelm scream follow, like it's a comedy and they're spoofing the Wilhelm scream. They have they do it like 3 times in a row where 3 different people get shot or something like that. And
I know what you're talking about, but I have no idea what it is.
I cannot remember off the top of my head.
I personally feel like you're just making that up. That does not sound real.
No, it's real. It's real. All right. Well, as we come to the end, Ben, you're our guest. So we have our dad advice section, and I believe you're a father, as you've mentioned. What advice, silly, fun, practical, a little bit of both, would you like to give?
Oh my God, that's okay. Wow, dad advice. I think, I mean, I guess it's not necessarily silly or whatever, but I was talking to my son the other day and I realized sometimes it's just cool to just be completely open and real with your kid. Like just say it the way like we were talking about certain things. And I remember thinking back to my dad and we would talk once in a while, but it never really, not until I got older, at least, that we had a communication where it was just like guy to guy. I think when I was younger, like my son's 12. So when I was that age, I never had that kind of conversation with my dad, like anything about anything, like whether it was girls or drugs or whatever. I remember when I got a little older and we started having those kind of conversations, my late teens, early 20s, I was like, I saw my dad in an entirely different light than I did when I was a kid. And I guess for myself, I'm trying to be more of that when he's younger. To where it's like, look, I get it. Like, you're going to do some stupid shit. You're probably going to do this. You're probably going to do that. Like, I'm not going to be like, you can never do that. Like, whatever. You're going to do it. You know what I mean? Whether it's like drug related or girl related or whatever it ends up being, it's like, you're probably going to do some stupid shit, but, try to think about what you're doing when you're doing it and try to make the right decisions while you're doing it, as opposed to saying, you will never do this, you will never do that, and if I ever catch you, you're screwed or whatever. No, like, we all remember what it was like to be a kid and the stupid shit that we did, and I would try to hide it from my parents, and I would just wish that he's still going to do those things, but I wish he'd be a little more open with me about when he does them. And I told him, I said, we were talking about certain things. I'm like, I'm not going to get mad at you. I'd rather you tell me and we talk about it than you hiding it from me. That's going to make me more upset. So I guess just being real with your kid and leveling with them on their level and not trying to be always the authoritarian on things,
It reminds me, I told my daughter the same thing, right? Like, because I still remember my mom telling me when I was younger, like, if you ever go out to a party or something and you drink too much, just call me, I'll come pick you up.
Something like that, yeah.
Then I did that and she screamed at me for 15 minutes. So I just hung up and stayed the night wherever I was at. And I told that story to my kid. I was like, hey, this is what my parents did to me. I promise you, if you call me at 4 a.m. and you need a ride home because the ride you got there, they drank or you drank, I said, I'll come pick you up. I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to love getting out of bed at 4 a.m, but I'm going to be happy that you made the right choice and we got you home safe. And I think that's really important, like you said, to be real with your kids and be like, dude, like, I was a kid. I know I told my parents, I know you're going to tell me, but I promise you, I'm not going to get mad if you need something or you need help or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to talk to my parents are still together. I've been together for 56 years now.
Oh, wow.
And,
Wow.
I remember I was youngest of 4, but I used to talk to my mom a lot, and it was funny. I remember my friends. It was to a point where like my friends would like to hang out with like my parents and like my mom and stuff. Like she didn't mind if we smoked or whatever. So like we're literally sitting there in my kitchen at like 11:30 at night having coffee and cigarettes with my mom at like when we were like juniors and seniors in high school, right? And I remember driving around with my buddies in my senior year of high school, and we didn't know what we were doing. We were just like fucking around, and they're like, "What do you want to do?" And my buddies are like, "Let's go hang out with your parents." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" But I remember I was having a conversation with my mom, and we were talking about drugs, and I smoked some weed or whatever, and I was telling. No, I forgot when it was. It was probably my late teens when I was telling her this. I'm like, "Yeah, I dropped acid once because I experimented with it just once." And my dad came in, and I was so like scared. Like I wasn't scared of my mom telling her that because we had that communication, that back and forth. But my dad, when he's like, what was that? And I was like, this was a couple years ago, but I like tried acid once. And he's like, huh, I used to huff gasoline. I was like,
Holy shit.
what? Like, what is that? What did you do? And it was this moment that he wasn't mad at me. He met me at my level. And it was, I had sort of regretted doing it because it was like I was skiing. I was with my buddies. I was in a low period at that time. I was like 15. I mean, it was crazy. I don't care if people do acid. That was not the right thing for me
Yeah.
at the time. It was a poor decision, and I personally, like, I learned from it. Again, I have nothing against it. For me, it was not the right thing, but it was such a opening experience to be like, so we can talk about this now. Like, that's cool. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
And so like the other night talking to my son, I had to have the talk with him, about girls and all that, because we had never really sat down and like literally talked about sex, and I knew he knew, and, we've seen movies and not, like Fry Their Teeth or something where they're, simulating, not actual like porn movies.
Oh, I said before, I watched Midsummer in the theater with my daughter. And if you've seen Midsummer.
Oh, God. Oh, God. What? How old's your daughter?
She's 19 now. We saw it. She was 17. Okay. But still, that is never not uncomfortable.
Okay. My daughter's 15. I don't know, man. I can't imagine even in 2 years or 10 years or 30 years doing that. But anyway.
No, I told a story that it was funny because I said, do you know how uncomfortable it was watching that scene with you? And she goes, about as comfortable it was watching uncomfortable as it was watching that scene with you. I was like, yeah, we're about the same boat.
I mean, anyway, so I just remember with my dad sitting down around the same age, and it was awkward, and he was like, we should probably have a talk. I'm like, okay. And he's like, what do you know? And I told him. He's like, oh, okay. And then he was done. Like, that was it. Like, there's no other talk about it, because that, it's an uncomfortable thing. But with my son, when we talked about that, I really tried to be like, look, and he did not want to make eye contact. It was awkward. I said, I know you want to get the hell out of here right now. I get it. This is awkward, but I said, look, I want to be open with you, and I want you to be able to come to me, because I couldn't talk to anybody about those things I was feeling and those changes you go through. I couldn't talk to my dad about it. I wasn't going to talk to my mom about it, and I just couldn't. I felt alone. Not whatever. I mean, we all had our own experiences growing up like that. In that sense, I felt like I didn't know who to talk to until I started talking to friends as I got older or whatever. I wanted that to be different for my son and be like, look, like, we can talk about this. I'm not going to be mad or think you're weird, or, because every kid just doesn't want to think that they're weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In front of anybody. And we'll see how it progresses with him. But I wanted to just be like, look, we can talk about this kind of stuff. And again, similar things with like, whether it's drinking or drugs or anything else, I just want to be open and be like, I'm not, I have my experiences and my stories, and I look back in my life and sometimes and go, holy crap, I can't believe I made it this far. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many times, and not that I was a bad kid. I didn't do a lot of like bad things, but you think back and go, that could have gone a completely different way.
Right. No, there's things I've done that I'm like, Yeah, that's like the opening of a horror movie. That should not have happened.
Yeah.
And I wasn't nearly as bad as some of my friends and stuff were that had much different home lives and other things that they got into some crazy shit. So I don't know. It's just having that open communication is key wherever you can, you know. And I love talking to my kid. Like my daughter is very much in her own. I mean, she's 15, so she's in her room like 23 and a half hours a day. And you know, we talk, and there's definitely some moments there, but I feel like her in like that's on my wife's side, she kind of gets, you know, I mean, again, we're close, but my son and I are like, okay, like, and he's also like the crazier one. Like my daughter is so responsible. Like I'm not worried about her. Whereas my son, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta steer this kid. Like, I gotta, like, so anyway.
No, that's great.
I think if you can, you know, be open and be a little vulnerable with your kids and show them like you've made mistakes and you've done stuff. Like I was having a conversation with my son today because I just went to the doctor to get some like treatment for anxiety issues that I have and things like that. He also has a lot of those same kind of problems. And so I was talking to him about it, like, you know, talking about how your brain works and how you can sometimes get caught up in stuff and how to calm yourself down, and just talking about from my own experiences, you know, and there's no super dad coming out in that. Like I'm just a dude who has anxiety issues at that point, talking to another guy and sharing my experiences with him. And just being able to do that, I think really helps open up those lines. So when you do have those situations, they know they can come to you.
But you're also normalizing mental health for them.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that's super important because you're being like, I mean, I don't know how your parents were, but my parents are very much like, oh, you want to cry? Nah, fuck off. Like you don't cry. You're a boy. You're a male, right? Where you're sad. No, you're not. You shouldn't be sad. Where you're really normalizing that form and saying, nah, it's okay, man. Like I deal with this. It's okay if you deal with it too. And you're probably really gonna help him when it comes to if he needs to get medication or go to therapy in the future. It's not going to be a taboo thing for him. It'll be like, oh, my dad did it. I can do it too. So I think that's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're right. And vulnerable is key. Like you're not sugarcoating it. You're not making it seem, you're not putting like a positive spin in the sense that you're trying to fake something. It's like, you know, I feel sad, but dad's going to be okay because everything's fine and don't worry about it. It's like, no, guess what? I feel really, you know, shitty or weird or anxious or something. And I got to deal with this. And this is normal. It's okay to feel that way, you know? And again, normalizing those types of feelings that like when we were growing up weren't normalized, especially mental health, you know. I mean, 100%. Luckily I always felt pretty close to my parents, even, you know, aside from what I was just talking before, even with my dad to a degree, but definitely, like I said, with my mom, like being able to be vulnerable with them, especially as I got into my teens, was key. I mean, I remember we got into a fight, like I went jumping off a bridge with my buddies into a canal, and that was pretty dangerous. You know, it was not, you know, my parents were gone that night and they found out that I was doing that. And my dad was so freaking pissed. And I wanted to visit my girlfriend at college, my now wife, and he wouldn't let me. And I was pissed at him, and it was a whole thing. And I left to go to my brother's we were jamming our band. I actually turned around and came home. I couldn't deal with it. I just came in and just started crying, you know, because I was so upset, and we just talked, you know, and it was one of the first times, and I was like a senior in high school at the time, that really we had this like communication where we just talked, and it wasn't so contentious, like he's pissed off, so he's just going to lay down the law. Yeah. Because that's the way my dad was. No, you're not doing it because I freaking said so. Shut up. Basically, you're not doing what you know what I mean? And it was like a closed gate, and I couldn't do anything about it. It was now like, let's talk about this, you know? I got my ear pierced once when they didn't want me to do it, and I did it myself. I just jammed something in my ear and just freaking did it. And I was leaving the house. My mom goes, that better be one of those magnetic earrings. I'm like, no. And she's like, get the hell back in here. It's funny. My dad found out, and I tried talking to them. I said, look, I want to pierce my ear. I want to have this conversation. I was like 15, and they were like, no. And they wouldn't talk to me about it. So I said, well, fuck that. I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. It's my ear. I'm going to do it. And they got mad. And I told them, I said, if we would just talk about it. So my dad said, write me an essay about why you want to pierce your ear. And I was like, okay. So I wrote like a 3-page essay, and
Damn.
he took it and they read it, and he actually graded it. He gave me an A. And he like, okay, you get to keep the ear piercing. 6 months later, I took it out because I hated it. I found the essay like years later, and I read it, and I was like, God, I was an asshole. And I think I had good intentions. I think what I was trying to say was good, but it came out in such a teenagery fucking like just narrow mindset way where I was like, wow, you're a dick, dude.
Yeah, just
I was way more. So I was way more of a wuss. I just got my nipples pierced instead because that way they couldn't see them.
Oh, okay.
Bro, no way.
Oh, it hurt like a motherfucker.
Oh.
Just telling anybody out there thinking about that.
No thanks.
Yeah, actually, just this weekend, my wife's sister called, and they were talking about her, catching up and everything. And she took her daughter, who's 18 and a senior in high school, to get a tattoo. And we just thought that was really cool. She wanted a 3 because that's her lucky number. And we just thought it was really cool that her mom grew up in a very, I don't say strict, but not very communicative, or a household that definitely would not fly. And she wanted to give her daughter, the freedom to do those kind of things and express herself. So we thought that was really cool.
It's funny because we're very similar. I let my daughter get her first tattoo at 17, mainly because she wanted to bet with me when she was 5.
Go on.
So what it was is she has 3. So my wife is the oldest of 4 girls, or 4 women at this point, and she was using the word like all the time, to the point where I was basically thinking I'm just going to smash my head through a window. And so I said, if you don't use the word like in the wrong fashion for 1 month, 30 days, which is hard for, I think she might have been 6, but she's young. I said, I will write right now off that I will get you a tattoo when you turn 17. And holy shit, she did it. I did not expect her to do it. I was thinking there's no way she's winning this bet. She won it. And to this day, that word's in most of our vocabularies, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Jason, you live in California. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
When that word's over the top. So yeah, I got her tattoo. She actually went to my tattoo artist, so it was cool.
Yeah. Was the tattoo the word like?
You know what? I may have told my tattoo artist that she tried to get that. Don't fucking do that. She got a butterfly, kind of a really cool a butterfly. I don't even know how to describe it. Like a neo modern art butterfly that came out really good on her forearm. And I'll be honest, we had the conversation. I said, hey, it's on your forearm. I have to tell you this. It's fucking stupid. But someday when you apply for jobs, you probably got to wear a long sleeve shirt, because people still somehow think that you have a tattoo, you're a terrible human being. But it's totally cool. So she got that. Now she's got a beetle on the other arm that came out really good, and it's totally cool, man. Like you said, like I had parents that were very, very. If I'd have got my ear pierced at 15 and not my nipples, I would have been out of the fucking house.
I have to say, my parents, again, my dad was definitely laid on the law, but I was the youngest of 4, and yeah, my brothers and my sister will always say that I got away with a lot of stuff, but I will always say that I did have, even at that, even in my mid-teens, I did have a relationship with my parents in general that was way more communicative than other people had. And I don't look at it. I listen, first of all, I was always scared of my parents. So it was never me just doing shit and thinking, oh, they're not going to punish me. No. When my parents, my mom included, my mom was the cold one. She used to file her nails to a point. That was the deal. And what she would do, like my dad was the yeller, but my mom, if she going to get mad at you, she'd come up to you and she'd take her 5 nails and stick them into your head. Take them in. She goes, here's 5. You want 5 more? She was stone cold. And so you didn't F with her and you didn't F with my dad, because he would F you up, basically. Like, not like he never hit me or whatever, but I mean, you did not want to mess with your dad. And but like I said, I think they were older for sure at the time, and I also wanted to talk to them. I did feel the need to like communicate what I was feeling, even though it wasn't always in the proper ways at the time because I was a kid, but I did want to talk to them, and the times that they were receptive to that, whether it was the earring or the other things, we just had a better relationship. And I always cherish that. And then, of course, you know, as we all get older and you start having kids of your own and you start looking at your parents and going, holy shit, like that's what they had to deal with. Like, look at the stuff that they were dealing with at the time. And I mean, all my siblings, we all live very close. We're all very close. I mean, both my brothers and my dad had a bourbon afternoon on Sunday, you know, where we hung out and tasted bourbons and talked. And, you know, that's a testament to my parents, and that's
awesome
to the family unit that we have. That I mean, I literally live 2 miles away from my parents where I grew up. Like,
Oh, wow, that's cool.
You know, and all my siblings are right here in town. Like, that's a testament. You know, if they were that bad of a parents, we probably wouldn't want to be around them that much.
Right.
And yet we all like, we love them so much. I mean, my dad just turned 80, and we're all like, all right, you know, you better make, because they live on a big hill. We were like going after him, like, you better get the garbage taken for you. I don't want you going on that driveway in winter. Like, you better get it. Like,
that's awesome, man.
So anyway, it's a testament to that. So anything we can do with my kids, our kids, my wife and I, you know, in terms of imparting those communication, you know, like my daughter, like we had them go through, like, I'm Catholic. We're not, like, we're both Catholic, but we're not practicing Catholic, but my mom's the Catholic, right? So it's like, we had them go through the baptism, the communion, but my daughter was getting to the confirmation, and she does not hold the beliefs. And to be honest, we're not forcing her, because we're not into it really either. We're only doing it for my mom. And we said, you know what, we're not going to make you do it. You should come to it to yourself if you ever do. And if you
that's
don't,
awesome.
that's fair. But I had to sit my mom down and say, listen, this is what we're going to do. And she understood. She got it. And I said, she needs to come to it to herself. I don't want to force her into something because we feel like she should be doing it when we're not even the ones going, oh, you have to go to church. You have to do. We don't. You know what I mean? What am I doing to my kid?
Yeah. But it's funny. It's the opposite. Me and my wife are both atheists. So we actually grew up Catholic. And again, not to get into like my weird family life, my parents are super drug addicts and alcoholics and terrible human beings. They don't listen to this podcast. It's fine. So we grew up atheist, but my daughter wanted to go to, when she was really young, wanted to go to church with one of her friends. I'm like, yeah, go. Like, have a good time. If that's what you want to go, like, I'll support you any direction you want to go. You need to find your own path there. And if it's not what I believe in, there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. We can have different beliefs. But one thing to bring up, I think you probably helped expand your parents' minds in a good way, because it sounds like you're willing to have uncomfortable conversations with them that maybe they weren't comfortable with at the time. Maybe it forced them to open up, because my child has definitely like brought some conversations to me that I'm like, holy shit, I would never say that to my parents, but yeah, we need to, you're right. We need to talk about this. And like, I'm super uncomfortable right now, and I just want to jump out this window here, but here we are. You're my kid, and we got to hash through this. And it's helped me develop and grow as a person. It's she won't listen to this because you know, you can't listen to your dad's podcast. That's just not cool, right?
But my kids love it.
Yeah, but your kids are a lot younger than mine are. When they get to like 16, they're gonna be like, my dad sucks, and they're be secretly watching Tales from the Crypt when you're not paying attention. But it's helped me expand as a human, just as conversations that I never expected I would ever have in my life. And yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, like, again, just appreciating, you know, I agree. I never thought of it that way. Like, maybe it was like, because again, like with my brothers and stuff, I don't think they had that. They just did not have that communication. Like, my sister and my mom probably did a little bit more, but my sister was also the only girl, and there was a little bit of a she can do no wrong type of deal, which kind of also blew up in her face. I mean, my sister's great and everything, but like my mom just assumed, oh, she's not ever having sex before marriage or whatever. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, I literally said that one day. I was like, oh, Mom, you know, I caught them, like, her and her boyfriend. Like, you don't put her on some pedestal. Like, she's not. But with my brothers, it was always like the law is the law. And with me, I think it was just more like, okay, can we talk? And I think it did maybe make them a little uncomfortable at first. But again, eventually, as I got older, and just even with my brothers and my sister, we all got to this point where it became, I mean, we're a very open family in many aspects and talk about a lot of things. And that it's nice. It's nice to have that. And hopefully, you know, I feel like my kids are, I'm the same way. Sometimes my kids say stuff to me where I'm like, my wife and I look at each other and I'm like, if I said that, or if my wife, because my wife grew up in a very similar household, like you couldn't say certain shit or whatever. Her parents were first generation Italian. I mean, she's first generation Italian American. Both her parents were born and raised in Italy and
Oh wow.
and stuff. So I mean, her dad passed away when she was 18. Her dad was like he was a really cool guy. I got to know him like a very smidge before he passed, because my wife and I have been together for 27 years now, I guess, like since high school. So
Nice.
But her mom, we haven't talked to in years. That's a whole other story. She's bipolar. She's a crazy hot mess. But so anyway, we had similar in terms of like, oh my God, if we ever said that in front of our parents, it would have been not have been a good thing. But yet we welcome it with our kids because we both are on the same page of like, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about it. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. One quick tip before we wrap up. If you do have to have an awkward conversation with your kids, the best place to do it? The car. If you're sitting in the car,
Yes.
First off, you're both trapped.
Yeah.
Neither of you can leave. You're in that space. And you don't have to look at each other. Nobody is looking at you. Can just have the conversation. You're looking at the road. They're looking out the window, whatever. And you can still talk, and you can actually get a good conversation going because nobody has to have that like uncomfortable, like, we're going to sit in the room and talk now, son. Okay, Dad. You're going somewhere. You're trying to get to a place. And so talk while you're there.
My son and I have a lot of great conversations in the car. We haven't had any necessarily awkward ones yet, but we've definitely had a lot of good talks in the car. Because my son's like my wife. He has the gift of gab. He will just talk, which is fine. I mean, I'm the same way, I know, but at the same time, it's a good back and forth.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when we're in the car, I'm trying to get him to understand, like, see that person over there? They have no idea we're right here. They're on their phone.
Right.
That person over there, they want to get in that lane, but that person's there. You got to watch all this. You don't even understand. Like, I'm literally like, he even said, he goes, I like riding with mom better. She doesn't like, but you don't get it. When you're driving, you have to be on the, I'm like, I get crazy because I get scared. My kids are going to get to the age. I mean, my daughter's going to be 16 this year.
Oh.
I'm like, oh, she doesn't even want to drive, but I'm like, oh my God.
My oldest is the same. He's 15 right now, and right at that, like, could start getting ready to drive, but also he's kind of like, I'll get it eventually.
See, I'm just like, hey, dude, I'm at the brewery. You want to come pick me up and take me home?
See, I kind of can't wait to get to that point. But it's the in between where I'm like, I don't think I'll ever stop worrying as a parent. You never do, but
You never do.
There's that sort of thing where you're like, oh my God, they have to go out on their own in a vehicle without me. Oh shit. You know what I mean? Like I'm a little,
I get it.
Yeah.
Even now I tell my kid, like, I'm not trying to follow where you're going, but you got to tell me where you're going to, because if you don't come home tomorrow, I need to know where I need to send Liam Neeson to. So it's very important.
Right.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. This was
Thank
a
you.
blast.
Yes.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, guys. I appreciate it.
Where can people follow you, find you?
Well, our website is frightrags.com. It's fright-rags.com. And on Instagram is just @frightrags. On Twitter, it's @frightrags. Facebook, if anyone's still there, it's facebook.com/frightrags. And that's pretty much where you can find everything that we're doing.
Awesome. Next week, we will be reviewing The Reluctant Vampire. We would really appreciate it if you would give us a rating and review on iTunes and a rating on Spotify. And again, check out Fright Rags, great stuff. And if you do, you can use coupon code Crypt10 to get a discount when you check out. And with that, we thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Adios.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.